Hi, this is Shauna, the CEO and founder of Fuel Talent. One of the things I have loved most in my 25-year recruiting career has always been the stories that people tell. Stories of leadership, career choices, company ideas, and team building. My inspiration for starting the What Fuels You podcast came from being curious about people's lives and wanting to help share their stories. What path brought them to this place? What decisions did they make that led to failures and successes? Who influenced those decisions, and what lessons were learned along the way? I hope you enjoy the What Fuels You podcast. Madeline Haydon is today's guest on the What Fuels You podcast. She's the founder and CEO of Nut Pods, the best-selling non-dairy creamer brand and an Ernst & Young Entrepreneur of the Year for 2019. Madeline developed Nut Pods based on a personal need, a rich and creamy, dairy-free coffee creamer without artificial ingredients or sweeteners. In 5 short years, Nut Pods has grown to be the number 3 brand in the plant-based creamer category, the number 1 selling brand on Amazon 2019 Small Business of the Year, and the fastest growing brand of refrigerated plant-based creamers in national retailers. Nut Pods also placed number 13 in the 2019 Inc. 5000 list of fastest growing companies in America. The brand's success is driven in part by Madeline's unconventional route to market, starting with direct-to-consumer prior to expanding into traditional grocery. Her approach to seeding brands and Nut Pod's success has been covered in publications including Forbes, BevNet, Seattle Times. Madeline holds a BS from the University of Washington and an MBA from Seattle University. She's a friend, an amazing community member, mother, and wife. Welcome, Madeline.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for being here. I'm loving your background with the Nut Pods. I'm going to get into rapid fire. I don't know if you've heard the podcast, but I always start with rapid fire. What is the most popular Nut Pod flavor?
French vanilla.
Of course. That's mine. I got it. It's in my coffee. I brought it.
You're in good company.
I love vanilla, all things. I even love vanilla fragrance. What is the quality that you most admire in a leader?
Compassion.
What is something that people would be surprised to learn about you?
I can have a temper.
Oh, what's your favorite way to relax?
Gardening.
Nice. What are you planting? Do you have a good garden going right now?
Oh, I got tomatoes, cucumbers. We've got lots of herbs, beets, romaine, chard.
Yeah. Oh, wow. My husband does a lot of the gardening, and we've got a pretty rockin' garden right now. I'm psyched. What is your favorite all-time movie, or the one that you could watch over and over again?
Tombstone. Val Kilmer, Kurt Russell. I know.
Nice. Easy on the eyes.
Surprises me too, but superb acting and great chemistry.
Nice. If you could see anyone in concert, dead or alive, who would it be?
I'm going to go with Garth Brooks.
Nice. We have different music taste, I think. Is that your favorite?
I do really enjoy country music, but
yeah, I have friends who do. I can't get into it for some reason.
I'm a little bit older.
No, you're not.
No, country. Not so much the new country, but the.
Oh, I thought you meant your ages. I'm like, sister, no, you're not.
Well,
you like older country music, like Kenny Rogers type of stuff?
No, more like Keith Urban, Kenny Chesney.
Okay. Yeah, more like I like that.
But that's, you know what, and I am too old for the under 40, but that's okay. I've gained other things with a couple extra years.
Yeah. So tell me everything. Obviously, I have the opportunity to know you, and I heard you give your speech at the Ernst & Young Entrepreneur of the Year event. I was so blown away. Your cute parents. I was sitting at the table right next to you, and I don't know if you remember because everyone was probably coming up to you, but I was just like obsessed with your family and your story of origin. So tell me about your childhood and your parents.
Well, I think one of the things I love about Nut Pods is it's got all of the themes that people love to rally around. You know, it's an underdog story. It's also an American dream story. And so, the great thing is that it's all true. And so I am the 5th of 6 children from refugee parents from Vietnam. I was actually born in Saigon. And we came over here when I was 1. And my parents had been working with the U.S. Embassy during the Vietnam War. And so we were one of the fortunate families where when Saigon fell, we had prepared, and we were up in the air within 30 minutes. So, we had to gather everything we had. And for my mom, she was pregnant with my younger brother, number six. I was a baby, and we had to get to the airport up in the air because with both parents working for the U.S. Embassy, it really would have been dire circumstances for my family. And so we made our way to Camp Pendleton in California, and then we encountered a little bit of protectionism, and the governor at the time didn't want Vietnamese people taking California jobs. And a wonderful governor up here, Dan Evans, had heard about the story of my family, and both the wife and the husband had worked with the U.S. Embassy, and reached out through his people to say, Washington State welcomes you, and he actually ended up sponsoring our family.
That's amazing. I remember Dan Evans. And so you were one, and how old was your oldest sibling at that time?
9.
9. So that sibling, that sister, is it a sister?
Sister.
Yeah. What are her memories of that? I mean, she's probably got much more vivid memories of being a 9-year-old whisked into the air and taken out of her home country.
Oh, definitely. And she is the one that has the strongest roots in the Vietnamese culture. And so it was such a tumultuous time. These times are tumultuous too, but different in the fact that Washington State in April was not the most hospitable weather-wise, and we were in tents in Camp Murray. And I actually was born with underdeveloped lungs, so I had pneumonia at the time as a baby. And so my mom and my dad, who were one of the few like people in our village that had linoleum floors instead of dirt floors, she went from that type of standing in Saigon to being huddled in the bathroom of Camp Murray, because we hadn't had permanent buildings built by then, and just to keep me a little bit warmer from the wind from the tents. And so I think that has been so much of my history of like seeing my parents where they were very affluent in Saigon,
Mm-hmm.
and yet circumstances take them to this country where they never
What's the lifestyle when you're affluent in Saigon? I'm trying to like paint a picture because I always have a vision, and then I'm like, maybe that's not right.
You have a house that you own as an individual, as a like single house dwelling.
Mm-hmm.
We had linoleum, we had nice furniture, we had a car and motorcycles.
Mm-hmm.
We had plentiful things, whether or not it was clothes or food. Uh, when we had different religious celebrations, my parents are Buddhist. I'm since Presbyterian, but they, would host families over for big feasts, whether or not it was like an anniversary of a relative's death, or whether or not it was for the Lunar New Year. It was a big celebration, and big celebrations cost money. And so being able to do those type of things and host
Mm-hmm.
was a big part of sharing in our culture.
Mm-hmm. And
And
so when you came here, what was your dad's job?
so my dad went from being pretty high ranking to working a machinist job, midnight shift, for a local cannery company. And my mom, who I don't know exactly the military equivalent in the South Vietnamese army, but she had about 200 people underneath her. And she ended up sewing curtains for American Draper Company, and then being a circuit assembler, like think about a circuit board with capacitors, resistors, and soldering components on. And so for me, I've learned so many different lessons that have kind of guided me today. Some people like to say education is the great equalizer. It's not. It's your ability to master the language. How many times do we see other people that have graduate degrees in other countries, and they're working, blue collar or administrative jobs because they haven't mastered the language to articulate themselves, to convey concepts, to be
Mm-hmm.
able to communicate effectively.
Mm-hmm.
And that's part of the reason why, I'm Asian. Of course, every Asian parents are like, are you going to go into business or law? And
Yeah.
I ended up being a major in English because I realized the power of communication and being able to express yourself and communicate.
Hmm.
So,
Did you have your name, your birth name was not Madeline.
no,
What was your birth name?
my birth name is Tanfun, and so
And so were you when you were little and you came here, did you pick Madeline or who picked Madeline? I love that name.
I picked Madeline when I got married because I was so tired. Like, you go up to our burger stand, you're like, "Hey,
Yeah.
can I have a burger?" "Sure. What's your name?" You get to say Shauna. I get to
Yeah.
say Tanfun. "What's that?" "Tanfun." "How do you spell that?" Oh,
Yeah. 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 Good choice.
thank you.
That totally makes sense. And so how has being a first generation American shaped kind of how you see the world and what matters to you as far as like the lessons learned? I love the thing about language. What about some of the things that if you're like, I could just hear my mom and dad saying this over and over again? Are there messages or they weren't like that?
No, there's so many lessons. I think the biggest lesson that I learned just watching my parents struggle, honestly, I mean, how would you do if you were, planted in a new country where you didn't speak the language and you had six mouths to feed and to clothe? And so we grew up with very humble beginnings. We were pretty much raised on credit cards because you can
Hmm.
imagine, sewing curtains and midnight shifts at a catering company doesn't pay, white collar salaries. And so, number one, I saw grit and I saw obstacles, and about how there were plenty of obstacles for my parents, but they still had to get through them in order to raise us. And they had a goal in mind. So, goal setting. They wanted us to be able to have opportunity in this new country that they sacrificed to bring us here for. So
Hmm.
college was never optional. We were, of course, going to go to college because that's one thing that can never be taken away from you. Jobs
And
can.
how did you pay for college?
So with humble beginnings, how we all six of us are college graduates, we went through loans. We went through Masonic Award scholarships. We went and we applied to every scholarship we can,
Hmm.
and which means we had to do well in school.
Yeah.
And so education was so important, because it was a way that my parents thought could safeguard my future. Jobs can come and go, positions can be eliminated,
Hmm.
but
I'm actually pretty fascinated by this concept of culture and how certain cultures it's a part of the culture to value education and to value it's part of the Jewish culture also. It's like it's not even an option. Of course, you're getting an education,
a
and
college.
then there are people who are like, I'm just curious how you even learned about the scholarships. If your parents are coming here, they're not speaking perfect English, they're working this midnight shift, and especially for your sister who's nine, getting used to the idea of having these luxuries and then going from that to like, I mean, you guys probably a lot more in the hand me downs and just living like that.
Oh, I was the fourth girl. I
Yeah,
had
you're like, this is
hand-me-downs
wretchedy.
all the
I'm
time.
not wearing this.
Exactly.
Were
And
kids mean to you? Did you get bullied at all?
um, it's interesting. Yes, I had my share of unkindness growing up, especially with other children. And the thing is that I am now a mother, and I have a 6-year-old and I have an 11-year-old. And the problem is that as a parent, you want to protect your children from hurt and protect your children from shame and all these things that don't feel good.
Yeah.
But I can tell you the fruits of what you want them to have, that determination, that perseverance, that compassion, the ability to empathize, sometimes only happens as a result of them going through those hard things that
Of
you're
course.
trying to protect them from. So
Of course.
with all of the unkindness, and we had plenty of good memories and plenty of kind people that came alongside us and helped us, but you use those
Hmm.
and you learn from that and you say, I will have a choice of how I respond to this. And part of that is learning how to empathize with other people. And so for me, when I build a company, when I build a brand, inclusion and kindness is part of who we are because I, I don't want like other people to feel like they're last to be picked on the kickball team, or I don't want
Yeah.
people to
Yeah.
feel like,
How are you as a mother relative to how your mom was as far as like what are you doing that's the same or different?
mm,
And
it's a good
especially because you're
question.
raising your kids around a very successful mother, a businesswoman,
Hmm.
and you want them to have that grit. I ask this a lot on the podcast because it is a conflict, I think, for people that were either raised with money, not with money, but then how do you raise your kids and give them that grit?
Yes. So I think it's a great question. My mom actually passed away in my 20s. And so she never got a chance to meet my kids or my husband or see all of this. And I take the great things about her. Like I try and be as loving as I can. I am a pretty decent cook, like she is too. And I show my love like my mom did through food. I bet your family's similar. And I think the thing that where I try and differ from her, and family comes first. And where I try and differ from her is I grew up with traditional Asian parents. So obedience and respect are very paramount. And I have two girls, and respect is paramount, but I want them to be able to assert themselves and be able to choose what's right for them and communicate. Now, how they communicate that is something that I can guide them and teach them about, but I don't ever want them to feel like I did growing up, where it's like, I just have to do it and I can't say no.
Yeah.
Because
You want
especially
them to, yeah, you want them to have a voice and
you want them to have a
yeah.
voice, and you want
And
them to be
yeah,
self-assured, and to train them to know what's right for them. If you're
yeah,
always telling them what's the right thing for them, they don't get to listen to their own voice. So
yeah.
in that part, I've kind of, veered a little bit away, but the values that I hold are very similar. And she was
Yeah.
tough, but she was also very loving. Parenting is hard.
But doing that and trying to run a business, yeah. It's good that you acknowledge that. So you're not putting that crazy pressure on yourself, or do you?
Some things got to give, and I think for me, uh, you know, what I really believe in is that motivation has to be learned, that it comes from within. So if I am pushing them and pushing them and pushing them and, sending them to Kumon and making them do piano lessons or things like that, they learn that they don't have a choice. And two, they also don't get a chance to cultivate the pride and the self-esteem that they're going to feel when they do a good job. I think there's a really important difference of like when your child has a school project or that poster board that they have to do, that they own it, they have that ownership. And if it is a B product at the end of the day, and they go to school and everyone puts it up to C, and they will see, according to their peers, about the spectrum of
Of
ability.
course.
And
I
they're
completely
and
agree with that. Completely agree with that way
and
of
so
parenting.
yes, and so for me, if she puts in a B effort, she's going to get a B effort, and it's going to be hers. Now, I can say like, what do you think about this? But I really back off because I want her to own it. If I am pushing her, saying, "Well, why don't we do this and this and this?"
Yeah.
Like, she loses the control over her project, over her work, and
Yeah.
then she doesn't win or lose, or when it comes time to be proud or sometimes not proud. You got to have those moments too, because the
Yeah.
best thing I can do for her is to take a look at her project and say, oh, other people did so much of a better job. I'm going to do better next time.
Yeah. The accountability part around it. So you, and moving on because we haven't even touched on nut pods and I have so many questions around it. I'm like, okay, let's rock and roll. So you mentioned that you studied English. You went to UW,
I
right?
did a UW. Go Huskies.
And go Huskies. I'm a dog also. And when you were there, what were you thinking? Like, I want to be when I grow up.
I wanted to be an English professor. I wanted to inspire and motivate other people. I thought literature and language was such a wonderful way of being able to connect to people. And some of the things that we are reading now have been around for decades. There are lessons there, and they're also a time capsule of what was going on at the time.
Yeah.
And I wanted to just inspire people and connect with people. And then
Yeah.
I had a series of professors that were very good at what they did, and they also were very realistic. And I thanked them for that. They said it's kind of lonely, and other than office hours, which sometimes nobody ever comes to, the classes are the only times that I see people. And in the academic world, a lot of your value as staff is your ability to produce and bring recognition. So producing, publishing, writing. is going to get you on a tenure track. And the
Mm,
teaching part sometimes can be ancillary. And I
yeah.
thought, well, that's kind of not what I wanted to
Yeah,
do.
you wanted to be more around people. And then you went on to get an MBA. Was that straight out of school or did you work a little, and like why did you get an MBA? And with that, I guess, what's your advice to younger people around getting an MBA?
So when you have an English degree and then go out into business, it is a wonderful education. And what I would say is I would balance my advice that an education is not always job preparation. There are
Mm,
some degrees that will port over beautifully to a job, like engineering is one.
engineering, yeah.
And so I have a wonderful, well rounded, broad education, which has absolutely shaped me. It also put me at a disadvantage when I went out to get a job. And so I learned that I was always interested in business. And the part about business that interested me was not the T accounts and the accounting. It was about how do businesses solve a problem with their products or services, and how do you differentiate in a sea of different businesses and competitors. Is it your business strategy, is it your product, is it your team? And so it was like this beautiful puzzle to start working against. And
Hmm.
so I then went to a private university, my only private experience, and a very familiar route. I took out loans. At the time, I was working at a nonprofit and I loved working for Puget Sound Blood Center.
Mm,
Um, it was a wonderful connection to all the values of giving back to the community and things like that. But
hmm.
I knew that I wanted to not repeat what was my job opportunities as an English degree. And so when you're in your 20s, you don't have a lot of like work experience to differentiate you. So a lot of it is what you went to school for. And so I went back and I got an MBA. I worked at it at night. I went and I worked till 5 o'clock, and then I headed over in traffic to school. And I went to school, 6:30 to 9, and
Good
then
for you.
sometimes I had study groups, and it was hard, but it was a chapter in my life. And I
Yeah.
recognize now, and now as an employer, when I see someone who has worked full time and gone to school at night, I absolutely respect them for that.
You're drawn to them. Yeah. So, okay. So you have this whole career. I want to fast forward because I don't want to lose all of our time on nut pods. And so I want to know about the origin.
Sure. I was in my 20s and I realized I was lactose intolerant, which is terrible. No pizza, like
So you know
milkshake,
that like
all the things
60
that,
or 70% of Jewish people are lactose intolerant.
yeah, in
I'm sure
90.
I'm sure we make up a big portion of your customers.
Well,
We dairy and Jews don't really work.
we're kosher certified, but yes, we 90% of Asians are lactose intolerant. And so I love a good cup of coffee. And I missed having a cup of coffee that was rich and creamy, like half and half. I just couldn't tolerate the half and half. And at the time it was processed creamers, it was powdered non-dairy creamers,
Yuck.
or it was all soy with 90% of soybeans in America are genetically modified. And everything had added sugars, and it was a lot of added sugars. So then I was not satisfied with the different market options. And then I was actually pregnant. I had gestational diabetes with Claire. She's my kindergartner. And so, when you're pregnant, you realize what you're putting in your body, and you don't want to put in the processed creamers with the
Yeah.
artificial this and that. I couldn't do a lot of the sugar because of my gestational diabetes. And so, it was really important, because if you don't control gestational diabetes, it could lead to stillbirth.
Yeah. So
Just
you
like
started this Kickstarter campaign. How did that
I
come about?
started the Kickstarter campaign because my husband is an investment banker, and he thought this is a niche. This is the reason why, like, it hasn't been created, because there's probably not enough of a demand. Otherwise it would have been created. And I'm like, well, hold up. You know, good ideas don't just come from big corporate America. And as a Kickstarter, I wanted to test out, am I the only one who's really picky about my non-dairy coffee creamer? Are there other people that would want to have an unsweetened proposition? Because my thinking is coffee is so ritualistic. You can always choose your own preferred sweetener and sweetness level, but you can't take it out. And so we wanted to give people the ability to customize their perfect cup of coffee.
Mm-hmm.
So I did a Kickstarter campaign, gave birth to Claire in the middle of it as planned, and we had Kickstarter backers around the world. And around the world, Shauna. So that told me like there's nothing like this on the globe currently, and this is widespread. This really has some legs. So then I had to take off my consumer hat of like, what would I want to buy in the store? And I had to learn about food processing and about
Yeah.
commercial ingredients. And you can't just go and buy the Williams Sonoma Tahitian vanilla that I bought as a consumer in my little kitchen
Yeah.
because that's not commercially available. And be able to learn how to formulate. And then it's a whole new world when you have to learn food distribution.
Yeah. So how
And
did you learn?
I learned by going to trade shows like Fancy Food, Expo West. I mostly paid my registration. A little bit of it was to walk around and be inspired and sample all these amazing products, but mostly for the education and being able to learn from speakers about how to price your product, how to calculate gross margins. What is a broker? Why do you need a broker if you have a sales team and distribution and all the ins and outs of that? And
Mm-hmm.
that's, I think, by learning it all, you keep that knowledge within yourself. And
Mm-hmm.
at the beginning, it's you, yourself, and I. Anyways, you can't afford to
Yeah.
pay
So
anybody
you
else.
didn't have, you had your husband, but you didn't have like business partners. And so how much did you raise in the Kickstarter campaign?
$32,000 in 30 days. And my husband had to keep his job as an investment banker because I was a stay at home mom. And
Yeah.
so he was carrying the benefits and the salary for our family.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I was taking all of his bonuses and putting it into
Good
NetBot.
girl. I read when I was preparing for this that you took a lot of tries and a lot of failures trying to commercialize the formula.
It,
So what does that mean?
it
Walk me through that.
it was 2 years of trying to create something that didn't exist. Remember at the time everything was processed or soy based, and
Hmm.
so there wasn't a. We were doing things that wasn't in the market yet. We were the first to be almond and coconut. Everyone was talking about removing carrageenan. Well, we formulated never having carrageenan, and because I didn't want that in our ingredients. And you go and you create something that doesn't have any artificial flavors or colors or any of the usual suspects of monodiglycerides or emulsifiers. So we were really cutting edge and innovating this product that nothing else was clean label. And
Hmm.
we have all of our certifications, non-GMO project verified, vegan, gluten-free, kosher, and Whole30 approved. But in order to have those certifications, you have to have a product that fits all those certifications.
Oh yeah, which seems crazy difficult.
Hard.
What's been the hardest part so far?
Well, I would say in the early years, formulation was the hardest. It took 2 years of my life. If you had told me at the beginning, when I had raised $32,000 in Kickstarter, that just the commercial formulation part would be over six figures, I would have told you that's crazy. I would never do that. If
Yeah.
you had told me that I would liquidate my 401k and our savings in order to do this coffee creamer company, I would have said, you don't understand how fiscally conservative I am.
So what was it that kept you going, and where did you get that grit from? Because somebody else could have been like, oh yeah, good idea. I would have been focused on it, but I would have been like, oh yeah, one of the big guys will just come in and do this.
Number one, I waited for 2 years for somebody else to come out. I mean, almond milk was so strong at the time. Surely someone's going to come out with an almond milk creamer. And so I had waited for 2 years for something to come out. And then I realized that, there will come a day. I knew with certainty, I could just picture it in my mind. There was going to be a day that I walk into Whole Foods and I see a product like Nut Pods and I say, damn, I should have done it. I should have gone for it. Because as we hear and also as we live, you regret the things that you don't do more than the things you do.
Absolutely.
And
100%.
and so, I went for it because I thought, consumers like me deserve to have a better option than powdered non-dairy creamers or processed creamers.
Hmm.
I knew there was a market need, and with a product that is ritualistic and people drink it every day, and just think about how big the coffee segment is.
I
And
love my coffee. So do you think that in retrospect, that if this hadn't worked out in those 2 years of trying to come up with the formula, that you would have gotten the bug and been like, all right, well, I'm going to go find my new thing. I'm an entrepreneur now, or that this is the thing that created you as an entrepreneur?
so this is the thing that makes me, in some ways, kind of an accidental entrepreneur. In my MBA classes, we had many, many, many case studies of different entrepreneurial, journeys. Some of them spectacular failures, and some of them wonderful. FedEx is a really interesting one. And so for me, what always got me is the financial risk. Like, I am not that person who just puts all my chips and my
Hmm.
401k and my savings into a venture. But with this one, I just really felt that consumers wanted, needed, and deserved to have a better option. It was a
Hmm.
sound product. It was solving an actual need, and
Hmm.
it was well differentiated. And I felt like I had something to give.
Yeah.
And we went for it. And so the first, you asked what was the hardest. Well, the hardest was 2 years of formulation work and lots of failed bench trials and pilot trials. I think the second hardest was raising money. I'm A, not in Silicon Valley. B, never been a CEO before. C, a woman. D, person of color, and a newcomer to the food and beverage. Like,
So you make up the point. Oh, 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 oh. I mean, you got every odd going against you.
I was basically a blind three-legged
Was
dog.
it, were you treated poorly? What surprised you about that process, the
Hmm.
fundraising?
Well, business is business, right? So it's not meant to be a warm fuzzy. People ask me like, did you formulate this with a chef or Michelin star, anything other than like it tastes good to you? And that's fair. And the answer was no, I formulated it based off of my own palate. And no, I don't have any culinary degrees or anything like that. So they asked hard questions. Every hard question that they sent that was valid made me hone my pitch, made me think about my strategy or my business plan. And so you have to control and be disciplined with how you handle situations, right? So whether or not it's bullying or whether or not it's like an investor that's being hard on you or your business. Now there's some like you know, just like BS questions like, Madeline, I see you're a woman with young children. How are you going to balance, building a company and raising your
Yeah,
children? Which my husband would never be asked that
of
question.
course. Yeah.
And so, and those just, you brush
Well,
off.
they do say people, investors, all of them that you ever ask say that they're taking a bet on the person. Obviously, the idea, but they very much take a bet on the person. What do you think it was about you? Or what have you learned about yourself that you're like, yeah, this is the winning formula? I've got that little something special.
I think I think for me, I would say what I saw in myself and what I see in other people is, does this person have the adaptability and the versatility to handle whatever is going to be thrown at them? Whether or not it's a pandemic, whether or not it's a recession, whether or not it's, competitive forces, whether or not it's operational challenges. Is this a person who is grounded that they don't have the answer, but they will figure it out, or they will get
Hmm.
people around them to help them figure it out? That's what I look for.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. Was there a moment in time that you felt like, oh my gosh, this is my moment. I've got a big break. Obviously, the fundraising, getting the check in the mail or through the deposit, but getting a big break, like getting that Whole Foods agreement.
Um, yes, but I want to tell you a story first.
Yeah, tell me.
It actually was the reverse. So everyone tells you when you're raising your Series A, you got to get an anchor investor. It's nobody wants to be the first money in. Everybody wants to be the last money in. It'll be a lot easier. And I was getting a lot of no's because of all the reasons that I listed. That made me a fairly unbankable
Yeah.
new time entrepreneur. So one person that my husband knew pledged to be my anchor for $100,000. like my minimum at the time was 10,000. So this was like, oh my God, I finally got my anchor. And he backed out within 24 hours. He said he knows apparel, he doesn't know food. This seems a little bit early for him, and he wished me luck. And I cried because I had other people that were on the fence of, well, let me know when your round progresses. So when I got my anchor, I called all those people and I said, hey, we're about 2/3 funded now. So I just wanted to let you know. And they came on board. And then, of course, I had to disclose that he
Yeah, you
got.
have to call them back and be like, just
Yeah,
kidding, not happening.
exactly. And it was so hard. And I felt like it was that sorry game where you started right from the beginning again.
Mm.
And so, but I realized after feeling sorry for myself about how hard it was to raise money, like he's one investor, he's one
Mm-hmm.
person. Like
Yeah.
no one person is going to determine whether or not I succeed or fail except for myself. Now that lesson, Shauna, has served me when I thought I had an invaluable, indispensable employee, or whether or not I thought I had like this, gotta have partner. And so the only person that I bank on is myself
I
because
love this. This is so important. I wish we could just like splash this across.
oh,
It's really important.
it
It's a
is.
lesson for your kids, for my kids, for anyone that's listening.
Yes. And I am grateful for this person because he taught me it early. It would have been a lot harder of a lesson to learn later on, but he
Did it
taught.
hurt the friendship?
He was never a friend. He was just an acquaintance
Oh,
of
I thought he was a friend of your husband's. Oh, an acquaintance. Okay.
an
Well, that's good.
acquaintance. Yes. And so, but you take lessons from people, and he taught me a big lesson about, I'm committed to this, and about how I'm going to bank on myself. And that is what predicated me to liquidating my 401k, was because I was banking on myself.
Good
And so,
job.
but to answer your question, the moment that I made it was, I think, when we had launched in PCC. I have a soft spot for that retailer, but we also launched on Kickstarter, so we had to have a way to get our products be able to be reordered by our Kickstarter backers. So we went on Amazon, and you can imagine after 2 years of waiting for this Kickstarter, like you don't want to try the product and be like, I waited 2 years for this? What a
Yeah.
ripoff. And I was so nervous. And we just had, we sent the email out. We said, we're available for repurchase. We really want to hear what you think about our product, good, bad, ugly. We're open, we're receptive. We'd love to improve on our product. And we had all of these reviews, that flywheel that Amazon talks about this is so great. This is what I've been looking for. I love the fact you're unsweetened. And when you hear that, and it's from strangers that aren't your neighbor, your sister, or someone's friend, telling you that, validating you created a product that works for them and they've been looking for it, really helps me. And I knew then that that peer review, like the Amazon reviews, work just like Angie's List or Yelp.com when you're
Mm-hmm.
looking for a great restaurant. It's
Mm-hmm.
that social proof of like, is this a good product? Well, thousands of other people think so, so it's got to
Yeah.
be a safe bet.
And did
And
you get into the buy box? I've learned recently about the buy box for retailers on
yes,
Amazon.
we have the lion's share online. I'm proud to say that we have about 60% market share online. We are the best selling,
That's
and
incredible.
and you know what the funny thing is? We're a 30-person company in Eastgate, and we're competing against Nestle and against Danone. And
This is like, I have chills. This is so cool. I
so
mean,
what
do you just pinch yourself?
I pinched myself when we were number 2 food and beverage in the Inc. 5000s list. Like 13 on an Inc. 5000 list as a 30-person company, from the days of being the blind three-legged dog that couldn't raise, the first round. It's like we have come so far, and you have to start with a great product, and you
Mm-hmm.
have to solve a real market need. But the other thing too is like it may have started from me, and I keep the vision going and the purpose of us helping people even through times like this when, you know, like, are there more important things than coffee creamer? Absolutely. But do
Well,
we
kind
make
of not. If you got your coffee, like you start to really appreciate the simple things even more than ever.
exactly.
Frankly, everybody's home. They're not going out. They're drinking coffee, that the ritual of the morning. I'm drinking more coffee at home.
Well, you said exactly what I tell my team, which is that we are able to give people a small amount of comfort
Oh, I love it.
and normalcy to the day when they can't go to work, their kids aren't going to school, they're
Yeah.
not going out to their coffee shops, but they can at
Hmm.
least enjoy a great cup of coffee at home.
Yeah. Tell me about your 30-person company. What has been your strategy around recruiting? And what has been your strategy around diversity, inclusion, kind of creating that company that you would want to work at?
So that is one of my big lessons as a business person is that you are building a brand and a product, and then you build your company, and you have to have just as much intention and clarity of what you're building there too. And so I have in the back of my mind, we don't have any type of like affirmative action programs. We don't go out and collect people in different, racial or socioeconomic backgrounds, but what we look for is diversity of thought and perspective.
Yeah.
And that's so critical because if you want people to say, "Ooh, I don't think this is a good idea, and this is why," you have to create an environment which A allows them to speak freely, B values their contribution, even if it's in a in a different objective or in a different perspective way that you thought, and have some psychologically safe environment for people to be vulnerable and say what they really think.
Hmm.
And so for us, we are so proud of that tenant of being able to be respectful and yet valuing different perspectives. And we're kind. It sounds so funny, right? Because
But it is a lot of people's values when you talk to companies and you're like, oh, be nice, no assholes. It's like,
yes.
it shouldn't have to be said, but it should be said because there's plenty of people who are not kind.
Well, here's the thing that I learned about that is I didn't really want it to be part of our values because how are you going to screen for that? Are you going to
Hmm.
do you help old people and do you like puppies or but how that manifests itself is, are you really competitive? Are you the type of company that values the individual rock star and you tolerate the behaviors that sometimes come with a rock star talent? Or would you rather have somebody that is very good at their job, works well with others? And some companies, and I would say, I would say tech companies, they really need to have those rock star talents and they really need to be pushing the edge and, creating like very complex things like that. We're a
Yeah.
coffee company.
Well, yeah, but you must have some competitive badasses. I read that you're in
Sure.
15,000 stores. Like, who knocked down those doors? Who's
Well,
selling for you?
me and the sales team, but I'll tell you this, the hardest working salesperson is the product. Because it doesn't matter if I'm spinning it or if the salesperson is spinning it. What really gets us those accounts is how are we selling through for the
Hmm.
retailers we have. They're
Hmm.
not picking it because I'm a women-owned business or a person of color
Yeah,
business
they're like, either it's good or
or the
it's not good.
packaging. It's either going to sell or it doesn't sell. And we have like category leading velocities for our brand, and that's what
Hmm.
sells.
Hmm. And how has your business been impacted by adding on all these new flavors that you've added in?
It's interesting because in the beginning, I read that people were very flavor loyal and not company loyal. Meaning, if you were International Delight French Vanilla and they were out at the store, you would buy Coffee Mates French Vanilla rather than stay within the line of International Delight. What we found with ours is people go back. They have like their normal. Yours would be
Hmm.
French Vanilla, but then we have these fun limited time offers, whether or not it's cinnamon swirl or whether or not it's our new toasted marshmallow.
Oh, I want to try that
Oh,
toasted
it's yummy.
marshmallow.
Yeah, that
I
I'll
bet you
send
I
you.
would like that.
And
I'll buy it. I'm happy to go get to the store and get it.
oh, well, it's an online exclusive on Amazon and
Oh,
our
it's
website.
online exclusive. Okay, I will get it on my. I can just push a button.
But we are creatures and we like to have versatility and variety, and so we end up, gravitating towards seasonals, whether or not it's the venerable pumpkin spice or
Hmm.
whether or not it's peppermint mocha. And so for
Yeah,
us, we pulse through these limited time offers as a way to be fun as a brand, be inventive, like nobody else is doing toasted
yeah.
marshmallow.
Oh, I love it. It's
And
gonna be. Yeah, I can't wait to taste it.
oh, it's fantastic. The reviews are up. And so in being able to have something that's new along with perennial favorites like French vanilla, hazelnut, and original.
Yeah. And so, aside from good people, is there a part of your recruiting strategy that includes passion for your industry? What kind of backgrounds are you mostly looking for?
It's not a requirement. I mean, people don't even have to like coffee. I've hired people here and they're still with me and they don't drink coffee. They drink tea. They may or may not use that.
They're weird. I'm just kidding. I'm like, it's like not liking puppies. Who
Yeah,
doesn't drink coffee? I'm just kidding.
exactly, exactly. But you know what I want more than somebody who uses the product or is a coffee aficionado is somebody who connects to the mission. So we're not here to just schlep non-dairy coffee creamer. We're here because we want to help consumers take a positive step in their health, whether or not it's reducing sugar or getting away from artificial flavors or colors. I mean, we have 9 ingredients in our like almond coconut line, and with all the certifications we have, it's like have your cup of coffee, the color and the sweetness level you want, and know that you're taking a positive step for your health.
I love that because that's obviously so more important than ever. And we're realizing that through COVID, right? I would imagine your business is probably on fire right now because even people who weren't thinking about health are now doing their vitamin D and their zinc, and they're like, I better not have diabetes.
Well, we have become so educated as consumers about not only our food chain and our food supply, but also we choose with our dollars about what companies we want to support
Hmm.
with our dollars.
Hmm.
And I will say, when everyone did pantry loading, when they gravitated towards Chef Boyardee and they had their hostess as ways of coping, you know, I had paused for a moment to say, oh my goodness, like this is not going to help boost people's immune system, right? This is not going to help them be healthy. And I know we're not going to the gyms right now, and I miss my orange theory too. But what ways can we self care for ourselves and our family right now? And I believe in the whole like once a mind has been expanded, it can never return to its original dimensions. We know too much as consumers about the link between how we eat and how we feel. And so many, not all, but so many different conditions are directly impacted by how we eat. Type 2
Oh, totally.
diabetes, obesity, like high blood pressure,
Heart disease,
cholesterol,
all of it.
heart disease. So
Anxiety, depression, asthma, all of it.
all of it. So those are the things that we can control, and I have faith. I've always had faith in our consumers to know that they are going to have to choose with their dollars on how to spend. And they're going to have to, like, we have people on our own team where their spouses or their significant others have been unfortunately laid off. So they're cutting back on clothes, going out, new toys and things like that, but they're investing in their food choices because that's feeding their family and it's boosting our immune system. So our business is fortunately doing really well, especially because we were ready. When people switched from going to retail and online, we had already a robust channel there, so we were ready to meet them with big arms. And so, in that adaptability and being able to pivot is really critical for any business. And
Hmm.
so, but when you have a healthy team, personally and professionally, and you have a business that you're learning how to settle into your new norm and working remote, like you just feel so fortunate.
Yeah, I'm sure. So knowing you and knowing what you've built and that you've got your children and that that's part of your values is that family comes first. How do you do it all? How do you keep organized? Are there any hacks that you can share with me or with our listeners on tools that you use?
Okay, so I'm going to say something that is not the answer that you probably want to hear.
And I
Is that
ask men this too, by the way. This is not a woman
yes,
mother question. I just always am looking for hacks on organizing.
I I don't meditate. Like I'm terrible at meditating. I wish I did yoga more often than I do. I struggle like every working mom right now, and and what I do for myself is number one, I've learned that you have to have good child caregivers because you
Hmm.
can't feel good about what you achieve professionally if you feel like your children are neglected or they don't know that they're loved.
Yeah.
And so being able to have that support community of people that can love on your kids and help you take care of your kids in the values and the ways that you want them to be raised, alongside of you is important. I think working from home has allowed me to, have lunch with my kids. I am off at 5 o'clock, and we hang out at our house, and we do fun things. I mean, that's one of the blessings of COVID
Hmm.
right now is a lot more focus on just the family unit.
Yeah.
I think also being able to self care and not have that be a dirty word. My help with my children is important to me because it allows me to focus on my job. But I've been working from home 1 day a week for a long time now so that I can have that time.
Yeah. Me too.
And, one of the things I do is with the right business trip, I will take my oldest daughter with me, and it's a special mom trip. We have mom dates so that we can reconnect, and I think the other thing too is making sure that you're not hiding the fact of how you're taking care of yourself. So my
Yeah.
kids know that, mommy's working out and she's taking care of her body. And really what that is taking care of my stress.
Yeah. That totally makes sense to me. You're setting
Mhm.
you're setting a great example for your girls. That's awesome. What have you learned about yourself and about your family during the pandemic and during this time that you're going to hold on to when kind of things go back, quote unquote, to normal or whatever that means?
I have a greater confidence that my children are resilient and they're adaptable. They've
Hmm.
adapted from not seeing their friends to online learning at home. They've been able to not only just like make do with it, but they're doing well and they're happy, and, be patient with them because like even though we're talking about missed summer camps and trips that we were going to take as a family, like being able to understand their little world has been impacted has allowed me to be just cognizant of the little things in life. And I want this slowdown period of when we take walks as a family, really enjoy nature, or, when we're able to have food on the table and enjoy good company, that these are the things that life is about. It's not about what
Yeah.
you have or what you buy.
Yeah.
It's about being able to have the riches in your relationships.
Yeah. That makes sense to me. Okay. So my final question I ask everyone is what fuels you? What fuels Madeline?
I think what fuels me is a deep desire to help other people, whether that's through my products or sharing my experience or my knowledge or my journey. I want to be an assist for other people so that they are on their own journey.
Thank you so much.
You're
Love it.
welcome.
Love
Thanks
it. Love
again
it.
for having me.
So good to see you. I hope I get to see you in person soon. I'll give you
Yeah.
an air hug for now. I'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, Shauna.
Thank you for listening to the What Fuels You podcast. Be sure to subscribe, rate, and review on iTunes, Google Podcasts, or Spotify, and follow us on social media to keep up with the latest news and episodes. You can also contact us at podcast@fueltalent.com to provide feedback, ask questions, and share topics or guests you would like us to cover in the future. We hope you feel inspired by our guests and that we have helped fuel your day. Join us next time for another episode of What Fuels You.